All right, now before we get going in this video, one of the first things we're gonna wanna talk about is a soil test. It's a good idea to understand what you're dealing with before you get started on any type of lawn care plan. So I'm gonna link in the description below to Soil Savvy. You guys know I partnered with them last year. I really like the way their kit works because it's really friendly to homeowners. So I'm gonna go ahead and link in the description below where you can pick up a Soil Savvy, again, to get a baseline soil test and understand what you're dealing with for the rest of the year.
Sheriff's helicopter overhead, becoming an all too common occurrence around here.
What's up, y'all? I'm Alan Hain, the Lawn Care Nut. Thanks for coming back for yet another week. So today is gonna be a video that's requested pretty much every year, and this year, for the first time ever, I'm gonna do my best to cover all of you, north, south, east, and west. Now, it'll be important that you watch last week's video first. That's all about pre-emergence, and I'll link in the description below so you can understand that, because that's also a part of your spring regimen. The other thing I'll mention here is in the last video, a few of you from California were like, well, what about us? You didn't really mention us. And you're right, I didn't. But what I recommend for you guys out west, because number one, I don't have really any experience at all with your climate out there, is just go by your grass type. So for example, the cool season grass types, Kentucky bluegrass, perennial rye, turf type tall fescue, which is also a transition grass, but also considered a cool season grass, or pretty much any other fescue, you guys are cool season. So if you're out west and you've got a cool season grass type, then you can follow that plan. Now, if you're somewhere in the south, then I'm mainly talking about Bermuda grass, St. Augustine, probably zoysia in most cases, and even centipede. Those are your warm season grasses. Those are the folks in the south. So if you're in Southern California, you probably have one of those. Of course, I recommend that all of you watch the entire video, whether you live in the north or south anyway, because there's always tips that kind of apply cross boundaries, and it's always good to increase your knowledge in lawn care overall, not just respective to your particular climate. All right, so we're gonna start with warm season grasses, southern grasses first. And in fact, before we even talk about fertilizing, I wanna let you know that probably you guys in the south, at least as deep south as I am, you're probably already gonna be dealing with some weeds that have come up. Even though we put a pre-emergent down, there's some that it just won't get and some that you'll miss, like these. Look at this, I just cut 1 week ago. Look at how big these are. This is 1 week growth. Look at that. This is what we deal with down here in the south. 1 week of growth. Okay, first I'm gonna talk to those of you in the south. Warm season grass. We're mainly talking about Bermuda, St. Augustine, right? And what you gotta do when you're thinking about a fertilizer program, especially here in the spring, is you have to think about how do our southern grasses grow? And they grow a lot differently than our northern companions. So this is a perfect example. This is a runner, and I talk about runners all the time in my videos. But this is St. Augustine, and the way that it thickens up is it sends out these runners, and what they do is, or these shoots, is if they're in sand or dirt, what they do is they send down roots like this, and then that sticks in the dirt, and then it can start growing upwards. So they spread out, stick, and up. That's kind of how they work, and they'll do this quite vigorously. And as you can see here, Bermuda does the exact same thing, albeit the runners are smaller, but there are certainly more in number. This is why I call this alpha male grass, because it just takes over everything. It just could care less about anything in its path. So what you have to realize is these southern grasses, they've got actually two growth habits. They'll grow out and wide with those runners, but they also grow up towards the sun. So the way that you can make your southern grass thicken up super quick is to cut it a lot more often. The more you cut its head off, the more it says, fine, you're gonna keep cutting my head off, then I'm just gonna grow more arms going to the side. You wanna mess with me, I'm gonna mess with you. So if you have Bermuda, then you're gonna wanna cut as low as you can, because the lower you cut, the more it's gonna spread. So with Bermuda, if you can get it down to 1 inch or even lower, I wouldn't recommend going too much lower unless you have a real mower, but if you can push this grass really low and cut it often, I mean every 3 to 4 days, then it's gonna really spread out and it's gonna thicken up really quick. St. Augustine, on the other hand, will do a very similar growth pattern, but you're gonna wanna cut it tall. If you cut too low, you're gonna scalp it down and you're gonna kill it. But the same strategy applies. Cut often, every 4 or 5 days if you can, just cut it higher. I recommend 4 inches at a minimum. Now we're gonna feed the crap out of this puppy because we wanna stimulate even more growth on top of it. Alright, so let's go through some frequently asked questions here real quick. The first one being, what if my lawn is still dormant? So actually this week I was in Macon, Georgia, and here's some Bermuda grass at a Toyota dealership, and you can see it's beautiful, nice and trimmed well, but it's still dormant. But the thing is, in this area, not far from Atlanta, the ground never freezes. So that means it's okay to go ahead and fertilize now, even though your grass is still dormant. Now the other thing is, if your warm season grass, especially Bermuda, is still dormant right now, go ahead and start irrigating. In fact, irrigate every other day for a good ½ inch. That'll help to wake it up a little bit faster than everybody else. Now another question I often get is, Alan, should I cut the lawn before I fertilize? And you know, I don't see a correlation between the two. If your lawn needs to be cut, go ahead and cut it. Don't let fertilizing interrupt your cutting, and don't let cutting interrupt your fertilizing. Now you might want to be a little bit logical in the fact that if I'm going to fertilize, I should probably cut first. Otherwise, while I'm cutting, the fertilizer pellets are going to get inside my shoes, and that's kind of annoying. So it's a little better to cut first and fertilize later. Other people ask sometimes, should I bag it? Or if I bag it, is it going to suck up all the fertilizer pellets? And the answer is, it'll probably get a few, but not many. I recommend you mulch anyway, 24/7, 365. All right, now we're going on a heavy stimulation, heavy growth regimen here. We're going to push this baby, and so we're going to put down a full pound of nitrogen in this one application. I've got a starter fert here that's a 10-10-10 that I was lucky to find, and then I've got my old friend milorganite. So the 10-10-10 I'm going to put down at 5 pounds per thousand. That's going to give me 1/2 pound in. And the Milo I'm going to put down at 10 pounds per thousand, and that's also going to give me 1/2 in. So I'm going to get 1 full pound in by combining these two fertilizers. Now, I'm not combining them in the hopper. It is 2 separate applications. We never want to mix fertilizer products together in a hopper and then spread them. That's a no-no, friends. From here, I would recommend putting down an additional 1/2 pound in every 5 weeks. Maybe every 6 weeks, but really we got to push this bad boy. 1/2 pound in every 5 weeks, all through the spring and into the summer as fertilizing regulations allow. The key here is to keep mowing often, every 3 to 4 days. St. Augustine, mow tall at 4 inches. Bermuda, mow much lower, try to get down to 1. The other thing is you got to irrigate. Now we're going to be fine here in Florida. We're going to get tons of spring rains probably every day, 10 minutes at 3 o'clock. But if you're in an area that is going to dry out, you do need to irrigate. You cannot let this program go without irrigation, or otherwise you could cause overgrowth and damage the lawn. As far as my late winter, early spring weeds that I've got coming up, I've chosen Blindside as my post-emergence control. I am putting in a little marking blue here along with some surfactant. Blindside's going to give you good, fast knockdown. Tolerant grasses in the south are Bermuda, centipede, St. Augustine, and zoysia. And for those of you up north, Kentucky bluegrass and tall fescue are also labeled as tolerant grass types for Blindside. That's it, South. Get off the couch and go to it. All right, those of you with cool season grass, let's talk to you now. Now, first of all, I want you to get the idea of seeding in the spring out of your head for this year. Don't ask me any more about should I seed this spring, because the answer is no. A lot of you guys keep sending me notes. Al, we've had these 70, 80, 90, 200 degree temperatures in like February, and it's never happened here before, and my tulips are popping, and cats and dogs are living together, or whatever they said in Ghostbusters, and you guys are all concerned about it, right? And I get it, I want you to be, I love the excitement. So here's the thing, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't put fertilizer on frozen ground. You should never put fertilizer on frozen ground. And even if your ground did thaw during that long 70-degree period or whatever you guys had, you're gonna get more freezing temperatures, probably even 1 or 2 more snowstorms between now and the end of March, without a doubt. So any fertilizer that you put down right now is just gonna be wasted, trust me. All you have to do is just be vigilant when the spring actually does hit and put your fert down then, and you won't lose a step at all. However, that early warm-up did do one thing, and that is it did stimulate weed seeds and crabgrass seeds to start waking up underneath that ground. There is no doubt that that happened. And because of that, you have to put pre-emergence down. Double apps, just like I said in my last video. You got to get one down in the very early spring and another one in the very late spring or early summer. You cannot sacrifice that, which means you cannot put down any grass seed in the spring. No seeding in the spring, my cool season friends. Let's use fertilizer, good mowing, and good irrigation to thicken up our lawns naturally, and then use the seed in the fall when we can aerate with it at the same time. So for you cool season grass types, if you want to use the starter fert that I recommend, and you probably should if your lawn is relatively thin, you're going to want to put that down first thing in the spring, as soon as the ground is no longer frozen. Just watch your in rate stay at 3/4 pound in or less. And again, it could depend on what your lawn needs and what the rate is on your starter fert, and then you can compare that to your soil test and adjust accordingly. And truthfully, that's what starter fert's really all about. We're just trying to even out the big 3 NPK here early in the spring to set us right for the rest of the year. Now, for those of you with cool season lawns, if you do want to stimulate a little extra growth in the spring and get yourself going, you can apply a full dose of milorganite, which is going to be 3/4 pound in. You can apply that 6 weeks after your first starter fert app. We'll be talking more as the year goes on, you cool season friends, but one thing I do want to say is you're going to want to consider a fungicide application this year in the mid to late spring, hedging against summertime diseases. That's one of the fallouts that I believe we're going to get from those warm temps you guys got in February and January, whenever it was. I believe that disease pressure is going to be really tough this year, so you may want to consider a fungicide app. I'll link in the description below to a good product that'll work for you. So I hope these tips have been helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave them down in the description below. We'll see what we can do to help you out. And as always, thanks for watching. I'm Alan Hain, the Lawn Care Nut, and I'll see you in the lawn.